All right. Welcome back to the Venture Podcast. We are here with Conor today. Conor has quite the cool story despite only being what? You're 2 years older than us. You're 2000, is that correct?
I'm 2000.
Which is he's has a bigger resume than most of the guests we've interviewed in their 40s and 50s. So it says a lot about Conor, and we're excited to talk to you today, Conor.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to be here, guys, and thanks for making the time.
Great. So just to start us off, why don't you, before we get into your startup experience and stuff, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the kid you were and what you were interested in growing up?
Okay, the kid I was and what I was interested in growing up. And like what age range? Like is that like when I came online, like my consciousness started,
Yeah,
or like
let's start there.
okay, cool. So yeah, I think starting off like when I was really young, I was always the kid who liked to build stuff, and I mean that in like the most literal sense. Like I think we all know Lego's most valuable brand in the world. In my room right now, I still have a bunch of my Lego models up on the wall. I was always building stuff, whether it was like Tom's Tank Engine stuff, Legos. Once I started being able to use computers, it was like Minecraft. I played like all like the simulation games, like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Satisfactory, Factorio, Minecraft, all that stuff. Really, really like building stuff. And I think with that, I also had this other side of me that was like really into reading and words and writing. Because it's always kind of like there's always like these two archetypes, which is like the kid who's like good at math and building, and the kid who's like artsy and fartsy and writes poetry. And I always kind of had like both those trends going. I think that comes a bit from like my parents. Like my mom's very like left brain, like good with computers, works with computers, and my dad's like more right brained. Like he had a pirate radio show. He has been on radio shows for a while, loves telling jokes. So always kind of did a bit of both. But I will say I was definitely like a weird kid, man. Like, it was in elementary especially. Like I think there's another audience, like a lot of founder types. Like I always felt like a little bit like different from the rest. I think most people growing up, like they usually have like sports, like extracurriculars is a big part of life. Like, you know, hockey if you're Canadian. I can still barely fucking skate, and I still have one sport I'm very good at. Um, so yeah, I was a kid who was like read a lot, built a lot, wasn't good at sports at all really. And yeah, I wasn't like off in the corner kind of weird, but I definitely like, you know, I wasn't like the cool guy in the class is how I would describe it. Yeah, to that, that was my early childhood. Yeah.
If I may, James, I wanted to ask Connor, how do you think your weirdness benefited you, other than like being a builder? Is there like any maybe key like insights or experiences when you were young where you're like this is might be a very good thing?
Totally, yeah. And to expectation set, do you guys, when you say young, do you mean like 9 or do you mean like 16?
Whatever you think would have the best story.
Best story. Okay, no, I like that. I'm 23 now, and now I'm like, man, am I getting fucking old? Like, is 16 young or is 9 young? Um, yeah, I think the big arc of like personal development was I was very, very socially anxious growing up. Like, I think a lot of founders kind of have like some level of this. We were kind of like, dude, like it's like really hard for me to like make friends or talk to people. You go to the front of the class, you have an announcement, and you're like fucking shaking, and like everyone's uncomfortable, you most of all. So I had this big moment in grade 11, grade 12, where I was, for various reasons, I was like, I got to do something about this social anxiety I experienced. And did you guys go to school in Toronto growing up? Yeah, do you guys remember spares? You'd have like a period off, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so in one of the semesters of grade 12, I had 2 spares in the afternoon. What I would do during these spares is I would go to neighborhoods in Toronto that had like, you know, nice cars in the driveway, like people who had kind of made in life. And before it was cool, 20 fucking 18, I would go door to door and be like, hey, what do you do for a living? That guy who asks people in the cars, like, what do you do? Like, I was doing that shit before it was cool, man. And so, yeah, I went door to door and just wanted to get out of my comfort zone to like be able to talk to strangers, because like so many skills and problems that you have, like the hard part, it's usually a lot simpler than people think, and you just kind of got to do it. And I was like, the hardest thing for me to do right now would be to go talk to a bunch of strangers. Let me go do it. So I went to a bunch of like neighborhoods in Toronto. Hey, I'm 18. I just noticed you have like a beautiful home, or you got like a super nice car in the driveway. I'm really into cars myself. Would love to hear a little bit about your story. I'm about to launch my career, and like honestly, if you just have any wisdom to give to me, I'd love to hear it. Third of the time, you know, you get the like, sorry, we're busy right now, and people close the door. But what I was pleasantly surprised to learn, this is a lesson I still carry with me, was like when you throw yourself out into the world, you'll find very often the world catches you. And during this time in grade 12, and I think somewhere grade 11 too, I caught so many cool stories from so many like tops of the bank at TD. And like one guy, I thought his house was so cool because he had a bunch of red Porsches in the driveway, and I wish I had this picture with me. But he was like the tomato king of Toronto, right? So, and he had all these red Porsches because it looked like tomatoes, and he had this super sick house. I'm like, what do you do? He's like, I sell tomatoes. Like, any tomato you have in Toronto, like, I'm your guy. And like, he let me drive his Porsche. I have like the most cringe, like, Pog YouTube video, driving his Porsche at 18. So yeah, that's like a big arc that I think got me like good at talking to people. And to like finally answer your question directly, Bryce, I think being like a little bit weird and like odd and like that oddball, it makes you okay with like doing atypical things, like going door to door and like knocking with people, or knocking the door and talking with people. And like I'm okay with that. And like I'm a little okay with people like, oh, like you, like, wait, you went to Kenya and now you're going to Europe and now you're moving to Miami. Like that's kind of weird. Shouldn't you be like buying your like fucking condo in downtown Toronto and like going to work at the bank? Like, no, I'm living like a bit of a weird life for a 23-year-old, and I'm okay with that because I've kind of been like that for a while, right? Yeah.
I think Bryce and I definitely resonate with that story you just shared, because like when we started the whole podcasting journey and doing cold outreach, and like the thought of it before you do it is a little bit scary, because you know the thought is rejection, but it's so surprising how many. It's not surprising now that we know this, but it's unbelievable how many people are willing to just pay it forward, especially the ones who have the great founding stories and whatnot. So that's a great point. Conor, why don't you tell us what got you interested in going to Western? I know you did Anjivi there. What kind of sparked that?
Yeah. So like leaving like high school, I think most of your audience, like, you know, if you want to like be a founder, you want to have like a big career, you kind of got to choose, or the options that you go for are like business, engineering. Those are kind of like the main two. And then you go into like investment banking, consulting, or something else, product management nowadays. And because I was always good at building stuff like this theme, I was like, hey, well, let me go do engineering. Throughout high school, I'd done like construction work for a company. And so, but I was also like good at math, good at physics, good at school. Let's go do civil engineering. And funny enough, I had agreed to go to Queen's actually. Queen's, I got into like Waterloo, U of T, Queen's, Western, all the places. And I can talk a little bit about like the decision as to like why not to go to Waterloo versus U of T if you guys want me to. But I had accepted Queen's. And then I had a phone call that changed the course of my life with a mentor who I'll name drop. His name is Mark Broadfoot. Went to Western, Ivy, did the dual degree. He's like running like a search fund right now, sick guy. And he said, look, if you're just doing Eng, Queens is great, right? Knowing our audience, the Queens versus Western debate's going to be raging in the comments. But was going to go to Queens, and this guy was like, you've done a lot of stuff in business. You had your own consulting thing. You're now like less weird. You can now talk to people. Like, I feel like you have like the bones to kind of explore this business side of you. There's this really great program called the dual degree at Western. I think you should do it. Like, you should really consider it, right? I talked to my parents, talked with other mentors, yada yada. Long story short, I was like, man, like Queens is good. It's a safe option. But if I want to like make it big, like this dual degree would be like friggin' sick. And do you guys have friends in Ivy? Do you guys know like the whole like AEO shebang?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Like, have
actually
you
did
get in?
the same plan at university. I got the Ivy, the Eng Ivy dual degree, and then Eng at Queens, and those were like my top two. I
Nice.
went the other direction though. I decided to go to Queens just for the Eng.
Okay. Look at that. The rivalry continues. Well, so I didn't actually have AEO because when it was released in grade 12, like I was like business kid, like I could never do that. Like fuck those guys. And like here we are. So I didn't have AEO, and so choosing to go to Western was a bit of a gamble because I had to get into Ivy, and if I didn't, I would have rather gone to Queens and like had regret. So my first 2 years at Western were all about like getting into Ivy, making that change worth it. Fortunately, got into Ivy, did the dual degree, loved it, have like no regrets. But yeah, that's why I chose Western. That's why I chose to do the dual degree.
No,
They're
that's
both
awesome.
good schools, okay? Not one
Yeah,
is
yeah,
better.
they're both good. Yeah, a bit of a rivalry, but like with all the Western Ivy and just like an awesome option. And I'd like if I was going back, I don't think I could have gone wrong like either way. Both are like really awesome.
Yeah.
In your experience with Ivy, like obviously, your grade 12 Connor is going door to door, meeting a ton of people. The things that Ivy kind of encouraged you, what lessons did you take away from Ivy that helped you become a better entrepreneur? And I'll actually also toss in the Cambridge Fellowship. What lesson did you also maybe take away from the Cambridge Fellowship? And for those who are listening, this is basically a fellowship for Canadian university students for the summer. They give you, or not they give you, you have to go work and find a placement in Asia. And you're kind of a part of this entrepreneurial minded community and great group of people. So, yeah, I guess I'd love to pose the question again. What other learnings did you have in Ivy, but then maybe also the Cambridge Fellowship?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Good question. And I'll split them into just two things because they were two very different experiences. Okay, yeah. So Ivy, I have a lot of thoughts on Ivy. I'm sure everyone does. I'd say like my like hot take with Ivy is a lot of people like do it because it's Ivy and like just kind of mail it into class. Like they're doing it for the name, but really like they're going so they can have the name, like network with like the bankers at Goldman and Morgan Stanley and get their jobs and whatever. Shockingly, I got a lot from class in Ivy. Crazy sentence. Like the stuff about like how to read cash flow statements and like income statements and like the 4 P's of marketing. Like I think business school and like an HBA, if you're coming from a background that is not business, like engineering or like medical science, it actually gives you like a lot of value to get that 101 on the world of business. Because Ivy has like a specific course on marketing, and like now I can hold a conversation with someone in marketing, be like, how are you positioning it? Strategy. You can hold a conversation about strategy, operation, etc. So the actual like books and coursework, like I think I got a lot from. And that gives you like the fundamentals of business, which I think every entrepreneur has. To answer the question directly, like it's hard to build a company of any scale if you don't understand like cash flow. And it's hard to build any sort of business if you don't understand like operations. Yes, there's nuance in like hiring and what your industry is and yada, yada, yada. But like the fundamentals, like what makes business breathe. A business degree does give you that fundamentals. And Ivy, I think, gives you a great business degree to start from. So yeah, that's how it helped me as an entrepreneur. James, you have a question?
That's good advice to business students because like I did a business degree through commerce at Queens, and and I was guilty of this for sure, but there's definitely those courses you go into thinking I'm not going to learn a lot from this, but then you like give it a chance and it ends up becoming something way more than you thought it would be. So that's good advice to business students because there's a lot of kids who do mail it in. You're right.
And like I'm gonna take a second here. Like in Ivy, the best business school in Canada, whatever some people say, you can't fail out of it.
Yeah,
like you can't fail. Like, how the hell is it the best school, but you can't fail? Like, what's going on there? And so, like, what that promotes is like people like really don't try in class, and it's like my brother, like you're paying like $30,000 to be here, like read the case. And for like any of your audience who's like in business, like read the case, do the readings, and like you'll be ahead of 80% of the class, and like you might even learn something crazy thing. So like I recommend like actually doing like your coursework, because like there's a reason why like going to school is like normal and expected, and if you actually like try to learn, I think there's a lot to be learned. But I agree with you, James. Like business, it's very easy to mail it in because you're graded so much. I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Conor, I also want to kind of segue into your like founder's journey through university. I mean, I think you founded.
Sure. Sorry, before we go into that, do we want to talk about the Cansbridge one? Because I think that one is an important question.
Yeah, Bryce.
Yeah, I could team up again if you'd like.
If you want to team up her.
Yeah, sure. So again, Kingsbridge Fellowship, explained it basically, placement in Asia for the summer, meant to really develop global perspective, but also entrepreneurial thinking. That was actually when I first met Conor. Is at the Kingsbridge Fellowship Conference, which is like a 1 week long conference. But he was a fellow, so he was there for the entire duration of the whole summer. But yeah, so Conor, I guess my question with that experience is like, what? I guess it'd be very different from business school or even a job, because you're in a completely geographical area, a new geographical area, new culture. And what did that teach you about entrepreneurship and some lessons there that really translated to your first business?
Yeah. I want to break this answer into two parts. The most important one is understanding what's possible is a massive thing. Being a part of this network, like you met the opportunity to meet like a ton of people who were like 28 and have like made like $5 to $10 million from like their company selling like plush toys online. And like, yeah, you'll see on Instagram, like some people like in a fucking like Lamborghini in Dubai, and you're like it's possible. When you actually like talk with that person and like share a meal with them and like buy them a beer at the bar, it's a different sort of like thing in your head where you're like, shit, like he can do it. He's 6 years ahead of me. And the important sense of why can't I comes in, right? I think a huge part of being an entrepreneur is like the people you surround yourself with. Like it's cliche, but it really, really is true. And there's a healthy way to approach this for sure. But Cansbridge absolutely changed my perspective because it showed me like, not only is it possible, like you can do it and you can come out the other side and be like a full and complete human being. So many of like the most like amazing humans I've met are through Cansbridge, and some are like, financially successful and like all that cool stuff, and they're great people. And some people are like not necessarily financially successful, but they're running really high impact careers and have this crazy life story and are good people at the end of the day. And when you are seeing those examples, like not just like on Instagram or like for a day at a time, but for a week, and you stay friends with them for 4 months and years, like my best friends nowadays are Cansbridge fellows. When I was in Kenya, I stayed with a Cansbridge fellow. When I was in Japan before, I stayed with a Cansbridge fellow. Like it really is like this like constant exposure to like great people doing great things. And I think as an entrepreneur, it was kind of like a bit of a free pass to be surrounded by great people doing great things, which makes the founder's journey like so much better. You'll hear so often that like, oh, it's a lonely path. And if you can find a great network of people, you solve that problem. It's not a lonely path. You're in it together.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then part two, which I don't have direct experience with, but traveling and seeing China, Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan, I really think young people should do it, especially founders, because there is like a roaring engine of capitalism in the East and opportunity that I think is like vastly underutilized. Like right now on Duolingo, I'm on my phone with me, got like a 500-day streak on Mandarin, because I like think learning Mandarin is going to be like a huge asset in the future. And being an entrepreneur or founder who can bridge those gaps of like the connection between the East and the West, there's so much business opportunity, so much unfair advantage. If you want to go build like a drop shipping company nowadays, like good luck. You're gonna have a bad time. You're up against like the other 100,000 young guys trying to do it. If you want to build a dropshipping company and you can speak Mandarin, you've been to China, you've been to the factory, now your competition pool is like 1,000 dudes, and there's a lot more 1,000 people. There's a lot more like room to win in there. So Cansbridge like certainly delivered on its mission of like being Canada's bridge to the east. And something that anyone can do even outside the program is like go visit Vietnam, go visit the factories in China, and just see like the economic growth and opportunity there, because there's a lot of it.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I still haven't been to Asia. I do need to go. I think it would be a really cool experience. And I didn't get a chance to do the fellowship, but I would love to go someday. And yeah, James, you didn't go, but I think did your brother go this summer for a bit?
I had tons, like it's the classic after fourth year, go to Southeast Asia, backpack all over the place for months. So I had a ton of friends who did it. I wish I was able to do it, but that's always highly recommended by everyone I talk to, which I'd love to do at some point. Maybe we'll do it together, Bryce.
Yeah, that'd be film some podcast episodes.
We'll interview people over there. Exactly.
We'll re-interview Conor when he sells his second company, and we'll do the interview with Mandarin. That's what we should do.
Yes.
In the meantime, we'll hop on Duolingo and get going there.
Exactly.
Conor, why don't we kind of dive into, I think you started several businesses throughout university and after, whether that's like, I think I see Co-Create, Principal Consulting, you founded a crypto hedge fund at one point, and then ultimately Cycle, which was your project after school. Can you kind of talk us through that journey, and why you took that so seriously versus maybe the internship route, but you also took that quite seriously? So maybe talk about both.
Yeah. Yeah, just to start on the business front, like I like had a lot of failures, like a lot of like, to use the French word, fucking failures. Like I think every founder needs like to just like fall on your face, be like, wow, this sucks. Yeah. And then a month later you're like, okay, but like I'm fine. I'm not like, world isn't ending. No one really cares. And like you're okay. I don't think anyone's gonna like hit it out of the park. I haven't hit it out of the park whatsoever, and like I'm on attempt 10 at this point. And so there's been some things in life where I've purposely set out on them, like with the intention, with like a 99% intention of like failing, like knowing it's probably going to fail. An example of this is to go back to high school. When I applied to all the Canadian universities and like got into all the places, I was like, oh my God. And like felt really confident, felt really good about myself. Honestly, felt like my ego was getting a little bit too big. So what I did was I applied to the US universities, Harvard, Ivy, Stanford, all of them, just so I could fail, just so I could like fall on my fucking face and get my ass handed to me by the world. Because I think that is important. Like as young, ambitious people, and especially as like young men, I think your ego is something that needs to be kind of keep an eye on it. And so sometimes you should do things like intentionally to fail. A good outlet for that is like things like the gym or like doing an Ironman. Because like those are really hard to do. But yeah, structuring things in your life and like having a good relationship with failure is important. So in university, I like tried a bunch of stuff with the intention, understand that I'd probably fail it. Co-Create, I think, was one of those things that like it was me and the co-founder who was like all biz and I was like way more on the tech side, and we were kind of just like throwing shit at the wall to see what would stick, right? Reaching out to local creators, like trying to get them to use our platform, trying to get them to like work with small businesses. The other thing I was doing was I was getting like CF students to come join us and like honestly like try to work for us for free, and like getting that skill of like how to work with people and how to get people to work for your startup, and like failed miserably. Like the guys weren't bought in, no one would deliver stuff. 100% my fault. Learned a lot of like really hard lessons that way. The other things like Principal Consulting was one I was running since high school. That one was just that was like my first foray into entrepreneurship. It's just like general business consulting. I started it in high school because I had no valuable skills. And I had this network of people that I had kind of built from going door to door who like were successful business people. And so I would go to them and say, hey, what are your problems in business? And they'd give a laundry list. And I'd be like, cool. Can I fix this one for free? And of course, I know I'd be like, sick, I'll do it. And so I think my first deal was a logo design for a company, right? This guy was like, where you want to redesign our logos for our new trucks? And I was like, cool, like I can do that for you. And then went home and I was like, well, fuck, I can't design logos. Like, what am I going to do now? I had a friend who was really good at logo design. And I was like, hey, like this company needs it. You can do logos, put them together. Let's make some magic happen. And through that, like you start to learn like the cycle of like selling and providing services, etc. So that's what Principal was. Yeah, that was at the entrepreneurship side. I can also double tap into the crypto hedge fund because that's a bit of a crazy story. But I do want to touch on the internship thing. Yeah, what would you want to know about the internship grind?
Yeah. I guess I could take this question here. I think the thing that stands out is like, number one, like this is really freaking impressive. Like just looking at these internships. And then number two, it's like, I think it's also what your average maybe business major or engineering major would deem like big time, like very, very big roles. So like to give an overview to the audience. So Conor worked at McKinsey. So you're a consultant there, and product management in RBC, product management, again, hugely coveted role. And then as a software engineer at Coinbase, San Francisco, huge company. And then at Wealthsimple, one of the biggest, newest, fastest growing Canadian banking brands as well. And then at Birch Hill Equity Partners, I think that was after grad. But still, like that is what that must have done to you for like the way you think as an entrepreneur. Like you're exposed to so much at McKinsey, and then you learned how to build products, and then you really learn how to build it through the technical side. I don't even know where to start, James. where
I guess the generic, just like what was your most valuable lesson learned through your internships? And like internships are beautiful because you get a 4-month stint at a company. You never get that in your life ever again. Like just what was the beauty of that for you?
Okay, there's a lot because each one was quite different. I think the part that would be really valuable to your audience is kind of like the metagame here of how to kind of approach internships and getting a job in general. Okay, so this is how I would describe it. Pretty much, I think I learned through like, I define it as like climbing these mountains. Like, okay, I want a job in like fucking big tech. Okay, like who are the top dogs in space? Okay, it's Google, Meta. At the time, it was like Coinbase, and when crypto was popping off. Okay, cool, get a job there. Okay, you want to do a business thing? What are the pinnacles of getting internship in business? Okay, well, it's fucking finance, which is like investment banking, or private equity if you're really good. And then, or you can do like the consulting path. And when you do the consulting path, you can work at like MBB, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, or Deloitte, or whatever. And there's all these friggin' mountains to climb, right? And I guess I got really good at climbing mountains, and I would also say really good at like finding new ways up the mountains, which I can definitely give some stories on. Like if you notice the McKinsey one, it's not McKinsey Toronto because that's hard as fuck. It's fucking Hungary, Budapest, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So yeah, it's McKinsey, but it's McKinsey like Budapest, which I can tell you is a hell of a lot easier. And in that also like is an example of this philosophy I have where if you're in a situation where you have a disadvantage, I think the smartest thing you can do as a founder, but also just as a person, is change the game so your disadvantage is now an advantage. What does that mean? If you're a kid from Ivy trying to get a job at McKinsey, you're just like the other 600 kids from Ivy trying to get a job at McKinsey. Disadvantage. If you're a kid from Ivy, a Canadian university, trying to get a job in Budapest, Hungary, you're one of one. And you're up against the 600 kids from all the business schools in Budapest who want a job at McKinsey. Now your disadvantage here of being from this, normal Canadian university is now a big advantage in this other field, right? So it's kind of like this inversion. Similarly, in like getting a job in big tech, I'm a civil engineer trying to get a software engineering job. Disadvantage, right? It's why I don't have like the CS background. It's a problem. No. I'm a civil engineer pivoting to a career in tech, so I have a unique perspective on how software works, and I'm gonna like break the rules inside the company because I know how to code a different way. That's different from the other 1,000 CS kids applying. Okay, now it's a big advantage. So I'd say like a big lesson I learned that the whole internship grind really taught me is like when you're in a situation where like you're given and you have a disadvantage, find a way to change the game you're playing so your disadvantage becomes an advantage. Invert your situation. And there's usually a smart way to do it if you can take enough long walks in the park and like figure it out. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. That's like
that's incredible advice.
Really good.
Very pertinent.
I wish I had received that back in first year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one piece, and the other big piece, and I'm totally not answering the question directly with the internship grind, is it got me really good at, I'd say, first principles thinking and like systems thinking. So pretty much by like climbing these like metaphorical mountains of like consulting, finance, big tech, you get good at climbing. You don't want to get good at just climbing the career that is finance, although there's an element to that. You want to just get good at fucking climbing in general. And what does it mean to get good at climbing, whatever mountain you're doing? And yes, that mountain will eventually be like entrepreneurship for a lot of your audience. It's what is the game I'm playing and like what are the rules to win it? And then you can focus on breaking the rules. But you got to do the first 2 steps first. So we can take, let's take getting into university as an example of a game, right? Because getting into university and getting a job at big tech are 2 entirely different things, but they're both games with prizes at the end. One prize is getting into university, one prize is getting a job in big tech, right? Makes sense, kind of?
Yeah.
Cool. And then as you're trying to get to this prize, you got to figure out like what is the game to get there. And so in the case of like applying to universities, it's like, well, the university applications process, which, you know, comes with grades, comes with extracurriculars, comes with an essay. For getting a job in big tech, it is the final round technical interviews, the behavioral interviews, the resume screen, right? And that's it. It's like, those are the games you're playing. And then once you understand the game you're playing, you figure out like the rules to win it, right? So to double tap into like the big tech example at Coinbase, well, each step of that process, the behavioral, the technical, the resume screen, each have rules and they have a way to win it, right? So in the case of the resume screen, it's what are the levers? Okay, well, you got to have a resume that shows, you know, relevant CS experience, relevant internship experience, which I didn't fucking have at all. But you can find out common elements that, like, on a good resume, you typically have like a big name company. And in the case of big tech, you have some form of like technology experience, right? And for me, it was like, okay, like RBC is my big name. PM is like the relevant experience, right? Okay, how do you structure the resume to pass the automated screenings? You got to have good grades, format your GPA this way, et cetera, all to say, as you're playing these games, figure out the rules. And if you want to figure out the rules, and the big part is just talk to people who've already won the game. So this means talking to 5 people who've worked at Coinbase as an intern, or talking to 5 people who worked at Google as an intern, or talk to people who run the game. So tap on your network to find a recruiter at Amazon to help you with your Coinbase application, or to tell you how things work at Amazon. And you can use your brain to figure out some common threads between them. But to summarize, essentially just like the internship grind helped me understand like the systems thinking that most career ambitions can be broken down into some form of like game. You can gamify it. You figure out the rules of the game. Hopefully you can win it. And then if you want to be like super meta with it and like a little weird, you can break the rules of the game by whatever way you see fit.
That's awesome. Sorry, voice crack. I'd love to transition and kind of build on what you're saying in terms of the rules of the game. I think it's an awesome analogy that is very like, I feel like it's easy to grasp. So I'd love for you to maybe transition that into now your journey with Cycle, and you know, your most successful company to date. Cycle was acquired just recently by Crossmint. It's Connor's most recent company, and I'd love to hear how you played the game with Cycle. before you wrote a line of code, before you maybe even talked to a customer, how are you thinking about playing the game so you can be successful here?
Yeah. Oh man, this is a good question. So kind of on the topic of like playing the game, there's like this whole other skill which is like choosing the right game to play.
Mhm.
And this is not like an original thought, but you can look online as like Tim Ferriss and all these people like say talk about choosing the right game. And like transparently, like I like playing some hard games, but in some things I think it's better just for like easy games. One of my goals in life is to like be financially free by X number, whatever that is. And to get to X number, there's 100 different ways to do it. I could sell CDs, I could sell landscaping, I could become a crypto bro, or I can build an AI company. And I'm pretty sure anybody else can tell me which two of those is a lot more likely than the other two. And it starts with crypto and it starts with AI. It's certainly not landscaping, right? Or I like the goal to get to like, $10 million by before I'm 30. Like I'm probably going to make that these two ways be a lot harder than the other two ways. So when I was thinking about what game to play, you want to play games that are easy to win. And if they're not easy, at least they're like reasonably possible to win. If I wanted to become a millionaire selling CDs, it would take forever. If I wanted to become a millionaire building an AI company, it could foreseeably take 2 years because people have done it, right? So that's kind of what, when I was thinking about what industry to enter into once I went into entrepreneurship full time. This was after my time at Simple Ventures, which was the venture studio, which I'm still there, like very part-time. But my time at Simple Ventures was like all about venture building, and it was like an absolute blast. Highly recommend them. Rachel Zimmer, Rob Palumbo, Mike Catchin, great people. But yeah, going into entrepreneurship full time, like the AI hype train was kind of like on full steam, and like a rising tide lifts all boats, and AI was certainly like a rising tide. So wanted to build an AI company, and just like choose the right game to play, one that's like easier to win. But yeah, what was the original question? So we can
so you answered so that probably, I guess you chose the right game to play, and now you're thinking about, okay, how do I want to approach this game playing the rules? So you said, okay, I want to choose AI company or crypto. We want with AI.
Yeah.
And then
okay.
How did you go about that part? The next.
Yeah. Cool. So from the people who like have built like successful startups, like common thing you hear is like choose a problem that you care about, right? Super easy sentence. Hard as hell question to ask. Like, what the hell do you actually care about in life, right? So there was like this ungodly Notion page of like all the ideas I had for AI, and like some of them were good, some of them have been stolen and been sold for large amounts of money. But the thread of thing that I wanted to do was something that like I actually cared about, and an issue that actually like was important to me, because I'm sure all the founders you've interviewed, all the founders listening, like it's a lot harder to build a company if you don't care about the problem. And so people always have like weird stories as to like how they find like the original problem they want to solve. I could tell you guys how I stumbled across the original problem for Cycle.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, okay. It's pretty nerdy, so buckle up. But it came to me over December. And what I do every December, because remember when I was a kid, played a lot of video games. I was a bit of a nerd, and honestly, deep down in some ways, I still am nowadays. And so every Christmas, I play Halo 1, 2, or 3. I pick one of them and I play from beginning to end, right? And I was doing that last Christmas, and there's this thing where you guys know how they like remaster games. They'll be like, oh, this game like 2000, well, we remade it in 2020 with like new graphics. They did that for Halo. And what they do is they upgrade. This is so niche. They upgrade the fucking graphics and the visuals, right? And there's a whole bunch of people online who love the new visuals like myself, but love the old music. And so for the first Halo game, they released a patch where you could listen to the old music, have the new graphics, and it was fucking great. This year, I was playing Halo 2, and I wanted the new graphics, but the old music. It wasn't an option. I was very upset about that. And I looked online, and a lot of other people were very upset by this. And everybody was asking, like, hey, like, you already did this for the last game. I'm I'm a software engineer, and I'm pretty sure like underneath the hood, this would maybe take like 3 days of work and make like 1 million people very happy. And so it got me thinking, and the company just wasn't fucking listening, and it was ruining a bunch of people's Christmases, namely my own. So I was like, God damn it, this problem of like player feedback for gaming companies is broken, because throughout high school, all my time as a gamer, there was so often that like game studios just like want to listen to what players want. And I'm sure you see on Twitter that like every other day, like someone's upset about some change in some game. They're clearly doing something very fucking wrong and no one's fixing it, right? And like so often in life, I always live by the phrase like, don't confuse ignorance for malice. Essentially, like if you think someone's doing something to hurt you, like they're probably just stupid, or they're probably just like ignorant of something. And so it got me thinking that, hey, maybe game studios aren't trying to like ruin people's days or their Christmases. They really just don't know something. Well, why don't they know what players want? Let's think about the problem a bit, right? Because it's important to me. Okay, well, player feedback usually works through 2 methods. It works through like these contact us emails. And if you have feedback for like Fortnite or whatever game it is, you send an email to this inbox. It never gets read, and it probably just goes to the abyss of nothingness. And then you have this game studio that wants to build what people want, but they don't have like good systems to do so. So yeah, the system was fundamentally broken. And the games that were winning in this space, like League of Legends or Fortnite was a good example, were the ones that had really good pulses on player feedback. And when I looked under the hood as to how Riot Games and Fortnite and whoever was monitoring player feedback, it turns out they had like 80-person teams whose whole job was to like scrape Twitter and scrape the forums for player insights. And in my head, I'm like, holy shit, like, God, they're paying 80 people to do this, right? And they're winning. Well, what if you could just pay one like SaaS fee to have someone do 80% of this work for you? Okay, maybe there's opportunity here in the specific niche. So yeah, that's how the idea came to be. And like, I really cared about this because I was like, if I could fix this for Halo, they could see that like, yo, this week, like 100 people asked for you to like offer old music and new visuals. We can just resell that to like other games and indie games and whoever. And I gave a crap about the problem. That's how Cycle started. And it was to fix the feedback cycle, hence the name Cycle.
Nice. That's a great story. And for context here, so you started building this in December. Months ago, you sold this to Crossmint. You got acquired by Crossmint. And that was within a year. Like, how did you build this? Less than a year. How did you build this within a year? Just kind of give us the spark notes through how you went from 0 to 1.
Yeah. So December was like big ideation. January, I think, was we started building. When did we do the MVP? I remember that like the big thing was like we built the MVP in 10 days. Like that was like on our pitch deck, because we did. There was 10 days where we had decided like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I was like, this is how it's going to work, right? We want a bot that knows everything about a game, can hold a conversation with the player, and at the end of the conversation can tell the person who runs the bot, the game studio in this case, like what the player wants in the conversation. That was our MVP. Because if we can give that to game studios and they find value from it, holy shit, we have a business, right? And so I believe it was in early February, me and my co-founders, we're going to do this in like a week, because MetaPoint, like I think if you set unrealistic goals for yourself, I'm sure like you've seen a lot of like famous entrepreneurs be like, they'll give themselves like intentionally really hard limits to make them be creative. And I was like, guys, we have a fucking week to build this. We just got to make it happen. So you cut all the corners. You find like the cheapest, scrappiest ways for it to happen, right? Did we use OpenAI's ChatGPT 3.0 API? Fuck yeah, we did, because it was fast fuck, right? Yeah. And so we made this chatbot in, should be 7 days, ended up being 10 days. Had the MVP, went to our first customer, and was like, look, like this thing works. And he was like, sick. I need this in my game like yesterday. Because this guy was building a game. He was a CTO, And his big problem was getting player feedback. And how he was doing it was through a Google form, right? And kind of that was his hack together solution. And like just meta founder point, if you find a problem where people say it's a problem and they find hacky homebrew ways to do it, it's a very positive signal that your problem actually matters, right? The part two to that is like, are they willing to pay to fix it, which is a whole separate conversation. But if you can at least ascertain that this is painful for them and they're already fixing it in some hacky way, it has legs, right? Whatever solution you're working on. So we built the MVP, got our first customer, and we were moving so fast that we kind of realized at that point, like, shit, maybe we can get funding for this. And at the time, YC, Neo, all of those big accelerators were open. So we went through the whole accelerator gambit, interviewed for Neo. We actually got to final rounds with Neo. Shout out Ali Partovi, great guy, still connected. But ultimately, like, Neo took a pass on us, went with this other. They gave an offer to some other gaming company from Toronto. If it wasn't for them, maybe we would have got funding. I don't know. But yeah, went through that whole gambit. Super cool. I think if you're a founder, particularly a tech founder, like, if you don't think you're ready to apply for funding or an accelerator, you should still apply, because it will ask you some very hard questions that will make you think the right way about your business. Like, for example, like Neo would ask us stuff like, you want to become $1 billion business, like, how are you going to expand horizontally? Sure, you start with gaming, but how do you want to move into like enterprise SaaS? It's a good fucking question. Like, I didn't have the answer to that, right? So I highly recommend like applying to accelerated stuff before you're early. We tried fundraising. The big point of feedback we got was we weren't thinking big enough. VCs, the VC game, back to that point, understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to find the next unicorn, which is like $1 billion, $10 billion business. So they don't want a small gaming AI company. They want a AI feedback juggernaut, right? And so we were too niche for them to even consider investing. So the feedback we got was, you guys got to think bigger. So to think bigger, I was like, hey, well, AI feedback for games, nah. AI feedback for fucking everything, right? So that's when we pivoted from gaming.getcycle.dev to getcycle.dev. And it was like a total different positioning of like, we just help you figure out what customers want. That was our big pivot. Fully transparent. Then we started selling to like everyone. Like, we entered the phase of like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what would stick. And so we started selling to like user research firms, started talking to RBC about sales. We started like running up a thing up the chain at RBC to do user research, talk to more game studios, talk to like Notion, like all these random ass companies, just to see if people needed this product, right? And yeah, we got a little bit of traction there. But then we kind of realized that, and this is what's covered in some of the publicity about Cycle, was, look, we have customers, we have stuff that's valuable. But to make this big, to make this $1 billion company, this will take like 2 years, right? And then we had to ask ourselves a hard question of like, do we really want to do this for 2 years to become the gods of like AI powered customer feedback? And through enough like introspection, I think my answer was maybe, which isn't a hell yes, which isn't a good sign. And so I was like, shit, maybe we should find some sort of like clean exit for this company and sell what we already have. Customers, the tech, the team, everything we already have. So yeah, that led to us putting the company up for sale. So we spoke to a bunch of competitors, got connected with Crossman through Twitter, went through the whole acquisition shebang, which I can't talk too much about the whole process, but like selling to your competitors is like a weird process. And Crossman wasn't our direct competitor, which is part of the reason we decided to go with them. But yeah, ultimately had the acquisition deal come through, seemed like a win for everybody involved, signed it, closed the chapter, and moved on.
Wow. Unless you have a question, Bruce, I was going to ask that's crazy that you're able to do that in that amount of time and clean it up. And it's great that you're honest with yourself too, that you weren't going to be able to do that for 2 years. Like that's awesome. What was your biggest learning like through this journey, whether it was like talking to, customers, talking to RBC, talking to all these gaming companies, or even talking to your competitor and eventually getting acquired by them? Like what did that teach you?
Yeah. So just quick addendum, like CrossFit was not a competitor at the time. The reason why CrossFit bought us is because they're trying to expand into AI. They have a new, I hope I can say this. They're essentially just trying to expand into AI by selling a new product, which I don't think is public yet. But it kind of made sense for them to acquire some AI tech and AI talent to help build out those capabilities. Why is that important to say? Because my big lesson from Cycle was really putting into practice this concept of not thinking about what you want, but approaching things with the mindset of what do other people want always. That's why I don't know if I did a very good job at the start of this podcast episode, but I was like, James, I wanted to ask like, what do you want? Why are you doing this? What does the best version of this episode look like to you? Right? If you read the book, like how to win friends, like influence people, there's it's some of it's kind of whack, but there's a really good concept in it of like, just focus on like what other people want. And like, you'll find fun and creative ways to like give that to them. And that makes you like a very helpful person. Like who doesn't want to be helpful? Mm-hmm. And so if you remember in my spiel about Cycle, we talked about VCs. What do VCs want? Do they want a 2X? Do they want a 5X? Do they want a niche AI gaming company? No, they want the next Google. They want the next OpenAI. They want 100X, right? And so when we were talking to them about raising money, we weren't giving them what they wanted, which was the capability for this ridiculous hockey stick growth. When we were talking with CrossFit acquiring us, what did they want? It wasn't about what I wanted, it's what did they want? They wanted capability to build out their AI products, to hire a great team, to have a worthwhile acquisition, right? When we're talking about Coinbase, what does Coinbase want? They want interns who have a CS background, but most of all are like willing to work hard and like be good, kind people who know a bit about crypto. Whenever you want something from the world, figure out what the world wants from you first, and then find a way to give it to them. And then you'll find a way to kind of get to where you want to be going. Yeah, Cycle was a huge example of like a huge lesson in like putting that into practice. So customers, there's this great book called The Mom Test, which I'm sure people maybe have mentioned before. Yeah, everybody's nodding along. Like it's very helpful in like, because the whole book is about like, it's not fucking about you when you're selling stuff. It's about like, what do they want? What are they trying to solve? Right. And so if you can live your life and live in business and live with your co-founders, figuring out like, hey man, what is it that you want? What does success look like? And then find a way to work with that. I think you're going to get so much more success yourself.
Awesome.
That's great advice.
Like, I really like the way that you framed the problem with this episode. I think it's very digestible and it's very clear. Whether it's like, what does the world want? You know what I mean? Like, figure out what the world wants first before you try to get what you want. Like you said it maybe better than I just did, but that's a very clear thought. And the other examples as well with the internships, and like thinking, can you articulate that one sentence again? How you described it again?
The internships, yeah, it was just like I want a job at Coinbase. No, it's what does Coinbase want from their interns? Mm-hmm. And then just either frame yourself to be that thing or become that thing. Like go work at a big bank to learn about how finance works, and go fucking start a crypto hedge fund to learn about how crypto works. And then you'll become a good intern for them, right? Yeah. Now, not to say I didn't do those things to get a job at Coinbase. So like, I wasn't some big mastermind. Like I was doing those things anyways. But like, if you can just figure out what the world wants, hopefully you already have it. And if you don't, at least the path is clear to get where you want to be. And you can ask yourself, like, do I really want to become the thing that this person wants? So when I was thinking about, working in private equity, right? They want a person who wants to stay there for 6 to 10 years, to climb the ranks, to give your nights and your weekends to work 60 hours and become a full finance bro, right? And like, that's fucking fair. Like that is great for some people. But what they wanted from me is not the thing that I want to give. And so they're just like, wasn't a fit. And so that world isn't for me. But if you don't go into whatever engagement you're doing, like knowing what the other party wants, whether it's a person or a company, you're going to have conflict along the way, right? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Knowing what they want. I remember the other part now, and you also said positioning with the internship. So it's positioning yourself in a unique way, right? Look at the world and look like because chances are you're not the only one who wants something. There's probably a lot of other people who do as well. So you have to position yourself so you're best suited to get, in a successful position or to get what you want essentially.
Yeah, no, totally. And like I can show you in my LinkedIn right now, like there's like people have like reached out being like, like, do you want to hop on this podcast episode? Do you want to like, can you do this like for my business? And I'll be like, cool, like maybe, yeah, but like what do you want out of this interaction? And they'll say X or Z thing, and I'll be like, great, like honestly, I don't think we're a fit right now. I can't give you what you want, but like I wish you all the best, and if I ever can, like I'll hit you back up. But look, you're telling me what you want. I don't want to give that, or I do want to give that. Let's not waste each other's time, right?
Yeah.
And like, man, like even in like to go to the personal development side, like I think so often, this isn't just founders, this is anybody. Like when you have a fight with like your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your mom or your dad, like you come in being like, oh my God, like you hurt me, or oh my God, like I'm not getting what I want for this relationship, whatever it is. Like you're putting the cart before the horse, my man. It's, look, like you obviously don't want to hurt me, right? I imagine you don't. But when you do this thing, like it hurts me, or hey, in this relationship, like I'm not feeling satisfied in it. You must not be getting something that you want because I'm feeling the same way, right? And you're just coming to people with kind of like this open hand. And so anybody wants to work with that person, right? It's just a much better way to like approach and interact with the world. That would be like my big message to your listeners is like, start with what can I give instead of what can I get? And the world will, funnily enough, be your oyster.
Yeah.
And the world, enjoy yourself at the world, and the world will catch you as well.
Totally.
Yep. That's awesome, Conor. And I know we're not going to keep you any longer. We're almost at time here, but we've gone way over time. Actually, Conor just been nice enough to stay with us for a bit. But I think the last kind of question we want to ask you is, what kind of advice would you give to people who are, like us, who are about to graduate? We just graduated. We're about to go into the workforce. What would you tell them to look for? And also what advice is going to guide you as you continue to navigate your career in your early 20s?
Yeah.
You're already given plenty of advice, so I need to harp on more advice. But
Last point.
If you want anything there or tell any more stories, anything to leave our viewers with.
Yeah, I'd say it's somewhat like antithetical to the other stuff I've said, but I think your 20s, because you did ask like people in their 20s starting their career, it is truly a time of experimentation. If you know what you want out of life already, and that is to have a nice stable job, nice family, live in the suburbs, like go work for Deloitte, go work for RBC, go stay there and climb the ranks over the couple of years. Like honestly, it's a beautiful life. Power to you, power to those people. If you don't know exactly what you want to do out of life, I didn't. I'm still learning. Go experiment in your 20s. That means that you're going to choose jobs and you're going to choose experiences that you feel 60, 70, 80% confident in, right? And like that threshold should be enough to make you feel like you're 100% in the right place. Choose opportunities that expose you to the widest variety of experiences, because through that wide variety of experiences, it will get you to the answer of what you want to do and who you want to be and who you are in life faster. Mm-hmm. So if you've done an internship at RBC already, do one at Deloitte next. Shake things up a bit. If you've lived in Toronto your whole life, choose a job that's in Vancouver. Choose a job that's in America. Choose a job that's in fucking Kenya. Change things up a bit, right?
Choose
because you are... Exactly. Chase a job in Budapest, 100%. because you're young and you're 20, you have all the time in the world. It is the best time in your life to do these crazy things and experiment. And later in life, you'll be glad that you did. I love this one song lyric. I'm a big country fan that says, "How will I ever get to be old and wise if I'm never young and crazy?" And so I tell your audience, be young, be crazy, experiment, throw yourself into the world. It will catch you. And ask, not what can I get, but what can I give? And I think you will be on the right path.
Awesome.
You got me excited, Connor. That's those are words of motivation right there. Sorry, Bryce, continue.
No, I'm just saying that was awesome. That was awesome. Dude, I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. Like, I really enjoyed this episode because I found your advice very digestible. I think, like, especially for our audience, I think there's a lot of learnings here. So, like and subscribe, like and comment if you like this episode. But truly, I think it was very well said in a clear, concise, and understandable, relatable way. So thank you for that. And two, congrats on all your success so far. You're 2 years older than us. You've done some amazing things. We'd love to have you, back on in 7 months' time when you sell your next startup. Yeah. So thank you so much, Connor.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for having me. And I appreciate you guys making the time. Appreciate the hustle you guys are doing. You guys will do amazing things. Dude, you're already in SF. You're already working with a startup. James, man, you're organizing this whole thing. You've met some amazing people. You guys are going to do great things. And I hope your audience does too. So thank you for having me.
Awesome.